Detective Min-joon Kim knows the body at the base of the Olympic Mountains wasn't a tragic accident. But the prime suspect, Lena Harper, isn't just a widow. She's a mirror to his own haunted soul. As the rain-soaked investigation turns into a lethal obsession, Min-joon must choose between the badge he carries and the woman who understands his darkness. In a game of psychological chess where every touch is evidence, how far will he go before the Pacific swallows them both? 1 mile left. One secret too many. One choice that can't be undone. The fog clung to the Olympic Mountains like a jealous lover, thick and suffocating, refusing to let the dawn breathe. Ancient cedars leaned into the wind, their needles weeping endless rain that carried the faint metallic bite of the distant Pacific, salt and iron, the taste of blood long before it was spilled. Detective Min-joon Kim moved up the trail with the mechanical determination of a man who had long ago stopped expecting rest. His boots sucked at the mud with every step, the flashlight in his left hand cutting harsh white arcs through the gray. Behind him, his partner, Detective Reyes, muttered curses under his breath, the words half lost in the roar of water sluicing down the rocks. "Min-joon, this better be worth an ammonia," Reyes growled, slipping once and catching himself on a low branch. Guy probably just got cocky with his ropes. Min-joon didn't answer. He never did when the body was waiting. They reached the ledge where the trail dropped away into nothing. Robert Hale lay crumpled at the base like a discarded puppet, limbs bent at angles that mocked human design. His expensive hiking jacket was torn at the elbows, rope burns angry red across both palms, as though he'd fought the line to the last second. Bruises had already bloomed across his ribs, dark purple flowers that spoke of fists or boots or something deliberate. Min-joon crouched, rain dripping from the brim of his cap onto the corpse's open, sightless eyes. He reached out with a gloved hand, not quite touching, just hovering above the cold skin. The wind howled through the gap in the trees, carrying the low moan of the sea far below. For a moment the scene blurred and Min-joon saw himself instead. Standing in the kitchen of the small house in Tacoma he barely used anymore. Phone pressed to his ear, while Sumin's voice came through tinny and polite from the other side of the state. "How was your week?" she always asked, the same way she asked about the weather. He always answered the same way, "Fine." "Yours." The script never changed. The silence between lines had grown wider than the mountains. Reyes whistled low. "Those marks on the ribs aren't from a fall. Someone worked him over first." Min-joon nodded once, already cataloging, already feeling the familiar drag of another case that would eat his nights and leave nothing behind. By mid-morning they were back in Seattle, the precinct humming under fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. Min-joon sat at his desk filling out the initial report when the desk sergeant leaned in. "Widow's here. Harper says she wants to talk." He looked up. Lena Harper walked through the bullpen like she owned the air around her. Tall, regal, her warm amber skin catching the harsh light and turning it soft. Her coiled hair was pulled back neatly, framing a face carved from composure itself. No lines of grief, no redness around the eyes. She wore a charcoal coat that brushed her calves, simple but expensive. When she stopped in front of Min-joon's desk, the room seemed to quiet by half a degree. Her voice carried a low, steady southern cadence, the kind that had been smoothed by years away from home but never erased. "I'm Lena Harper, Robert's wife." He stood, slower than he meant to. "Mrs. Harper, I'm sorry for your loss." She inclined her head, the gesture polite and nothing more. He loved those trails. Said the danger kept him sharp. "I told him one day the mountain would call his bluff." A small pause. It did. Min-joon studied her. No tremor in her hands. No tears. Only a faint cut across the meat of her right palm, fresh, still pink, and the ghost of shadows at the base of her throat, the kind that could be fingerprints if you looked long enough. His gaze lingered there a beat too long. She noticed. Of course she did. "May I see him?" she asked quietly. "Not yet. The medical examiner needs more time." She nodded again, unhurried. "Then tell me what happened. Please." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat crossing her legs at the ankles, hands folded in her lap. The cut on her palm caught the light when she moved. He fell from the ridge, Min-joon said. But there are inconsistencies. Bruises that don't match a simple slip. Rope burns like he was holding on too hard. Lena's eyes never left his. Robert was strong, stubborn. If he was falling, he would have fought it. And the bruises on his ribs? A flicker. Something so quick he almost missed it. He trained hard. Sometimes he pushed too far. Min-joon leaned forward slightly. Did he ever push you? The question hung between them, naked and sharp. For the first time, something moved behind her calm. Not fear, not anger. Something darker, older. He pushed everyone, she said softly. That's who he was. Silence stretched. Rain tapped the precinct windows like impatient fingers. When she stood to leave, she paused. You look tired, detective. I don't sleep much. Neither did he. Not toward the end. She turned and walked away, coat swaying, heels clicking softly on the linoleum. Min-joon watched until she disappeared through the glass doors. Hours later, he drove home through sheets of rain that hammered the windshield like accusations. The wipers fought a losing battle. Lena Harper's face stayed burned behind his eyelids. Those steady eyes, that faint cut, the shadows at her throat. The case file sat on the passenger seat, heavy as a loaded gun. He parked outside his dark house and sat there a long time, engine ticking as it cooled. For the first time in months, his insomnia didn't feel like an empty room. It felt like anticipation, like something or someone was finally waiting in the dark with him. Seattle never slept, but it pretended to under the downpour, and Min-joon Kim sat motionless in his unmarked sedan, parked half a block from Lena Harper's building. The engine was off, the windows fogged from his slow breathing. He had told himself this was routine, standard surveillance on a person of interest. But the binoculars pressed so hard against the sockets they left crescent bruises under his eyes. He didn't care. He needed to see her clearly. Through the lens, her apartment glowed like a single candle in a blackout. She moved with deliberate economy, lighting 3 slim tapers on the windowsill, pouring steaming tea into a chipped porcelain cup, pausing to trace a finger along the rim as though testing its temperature against some private memory. Her silhouette carved sharp angles against the warm light, shoulders straight, head tilted slightly as if listening to the rain's monologue. She knew he was there. He felt it the way prey feels the shadow of wings overhead. Then she turned, directly toward his car. The distance was nothing to her gaze. She lifted the cup to her lips, held his stare through the glass and the rain and the dark, and smiled. Not wide, not inviting, just a small, razor-thin curve that sliced straight through the exhaustion in his chest and left something raw bleeding behind it. Min-joon lowered the binoculars. His hand shook once, then steadied. An hour later, he was at her door, badge in one hand, the other clenched at his side. He knocked twice, sharp, official. The door opened almost immediately. No chain, no hesitation. Lena stood there in a loose silk robe the color of midnight. Hair still coiled, but a few strands escaping to frame her face. The scent of jasmine drifted out, thick and heady, undercut by something sharper, electric like ozone after lightning. Detective Kim, she said, voice low and unhurried. I was wondering how long you'd sit out there before you decided to come in. He didn't flinch. I need to ask you some questions. Officially, she stepped aside, then come in out of the rain. The apartment was small, warm, lived in. Books stacked unevenly on shelves. A frayed carpet lay beneath them, the candles having burned down to low flickers. She pulled the door shut, the latch catching with a soft, haunting finality. Sit down, she urged, nodding toward the sofa. You look like the weight of the night is finally catching up to you. He stayed on his feet. Robert Hade, your husband. You told me he had a taste for danger. I did. You didn't look particularly shocked when I mentioned the bruising. Without asking, she tipped the kettle, filling a second mug with chamomile. The rising steam drifted between them like the ghost of a firing line. Robert accumulated bruises the way some men collect trophies, she said. From training, from conflict, from just existing. He carried them like badges of honor. Min-joon took the mug. The tea scalded his tongue, but he kept his expression unreadable. And the marks on his ribs? Those didn't come from a sparring match. Lena met his stare, unflinching. No, they didn't. A brittle silence took hold, pulled tight as a tripwire. You've got marks of your own, he remarked quietly. She glanced at the thin, pale scar on her wrist as if seeing it for the first time, then toward the fading violet shadows near her collarbone. She made no move to pull her shirt higher. Ido, who gave them to you? Her eyes locked onto his, steady and absolute. The same man who taught me what it takes to outlast him. Min-joon set the tea aside, his heart thudding against his ribs. I'm not here to judge you. You're here to suspect me. She moved closer, bringing the scent of jasmine with her, until he could see the amber flecks in her dark irises. And you're playing the part perfectly. He didn't pull away. The hours bled together in fragments. A cycle of questions followed by answers that revealed nothing. The rain continued its steady drumbeat against the glass. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him. Min-joon's head slumped against the cushions, his eyelids heavy as lead. He didn't fight it. He woke to the low, resonant hum of an old spiritual drifting from the kitchen. Something about trouble don't last always, the notes vibrating deep in his ribcage. For the first time in years, sleep had come without dreams, without the usual jagged edges of half-remembered arguments or empty rooms. It had come clean, deep, terrifying in its completeness, like forgiveness he hadn't earned. Lena sat on the arm of the couch now, watching him. Her hand rested lightly on his wrist, barely there, yet the touch seared through coat and shirt and skin straight to bone. He didn't pull away. You slept, she said softly. He nodded once, throat too tight for words. There's porridge on the stove. Warm. Eat something. He looked at her, really looked. The scar on her wrist caught the candlelight. The bruises on her throat looked older now, almost gone, but still visible enough to accuse. She wore them openly, like evidence she refused to bury. Why, he asked. Because you needed it. No. Why let me stay? Why let me see? She tilted her head. Because you're already drowning, detective. And I know what that feels like. He stood slowly. The room tilted for a second before righting itself. Outside, dawn was bleeding gray through the rain-streaked windows. I have to go, he said. I know. At the door he paused, hand on the knob. This isn't over. Her smile returned, small, sharp, knowing. I didn't think it was. He stepped into the hallway. The rain hit him like a slap, cold and personal, soaking through his coat in seconds. He walked to the car without looking back, but he felt her eyes on him the whole way down the stairs. When he slid behind the wheel, the engine turned over with a low growl. He sat there a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. He would come back, again and again, until one of them broke, and he already knew which one it would be. Min-joon's office sat at the back of the precinct's third floor, a windowless box lit only by 2 desk lamps that flickered like they were on their last breath. The air smelled of stale coffee, cigarette ash he'd sworn off years ago but still craved, and the faint metallic tang of old paper. Files lay scattered across the desk like casualties. Reports, photos, timelines that refused to line up. He sat hunched over the monitor, the blue glow carving deep shadows under his eyes. He clicked through Lena Harper's life the way a man might pick at a scab he knew would bleed. Georgia marriage certificate first, dated 8 years back. Robert Hale's name bold beside hers. Divorce papers filed 3 years later. The language clinical, irreconcilable differences, but the attached restraining order told a different story. Photos from the file. Lena at 29, cheek bruised purple, lips split, eyes staring straight into the camera as though daring the lens to look away. Then hospital records. Broken wrist. Concussion. A pattern that ended only when she left the state. Deeper, her mother's death certificate. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Autopsy noted high levels of morphine in the blood. Administered at home, no doctor present. The coroner's note was terse. Possible assisted suicide. No criminal charges filed due to lack of evidence, and patient's documented terminal wishes. But Min-joon knew the tremor in Lena's hands when she spoke of her mother wasn't grief alone. It was memory of the syringe, the whispered thank you, the weight of mercy that never quite lifted. He leaned back, chair creaking. The lamp buzzed louder, as though mocking him. Their meetings had shifted in the last week. No more formal interviews in the precinct bullpen. Now they met at her apartment after dark, the pretense of follow-up questions thinning with every visit. Tonight the rain lashed the windows in furious sheets, turning the glass into a liquid wall. Lena stood at the stove, sleeves rolled to her elbows, stirring a deep iron skillet. Garlic hissed as it hit hot oil. Smoked paprika bloomed in the air like a warning. Not the heavy, nostalgic soul food people expected from a Southern woman. This was sharper, more deliberate. Chicken thighs seared crisp, onions caramelized to the edge of burning, a sauce reduced until it clung like guilt. Smoke curled toward the ceiling in slow signals only they could read. "Sit," she said without turning. "You're starving yourself again." Min-joon took the chair at the small table. One lamp burned between them, casting long shadows that made her face look carved from amber and resolve. She plated the food, set it in front of him, then sat close enough that their knees brushed under the table. He ate slowly. The flavors hit hard. Heat, smoke, a faint sweetness that lingered like regret. "You helped me today," he said finally. "That tip on the Ballard stabbing. The witness who saw the suspect's tattoo. How did you know?" She shrugged, fork tracing circles in her own untouched plate. "People talk. I listen. That's all." Their eyes met. "Help," he set his fork down. "Tell me about your mother." Lena's hand stilled. For a long moment, the only sound was rain drumming the roof like impatient fingers. She was dying slow, then again with something closer to desperation. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand palm up, letting him see the thin white scar that ran across the base of her thumb. Old, but still visible. "Robert's fists," she said quietly. "Not always closed. Sometimes open. Sometimes holding things he shouldn't have." Min-joon traced the scar with his thumb. The touch was light, but it burned. "The bruises on your throat. They're fading. They do that. And the ones that don't show?" She met his gaze. "Those are inside." He exhaled, ragged. "I keep seeing you on that ridge. In my head, standing there while he fell." Lena didn't blink. "Do you see me pushing?" "I see the timeline. The gaps. The way you knew exactly when to call it in." She leaned closer. Her breath brushed his cheek. "And what do you feel when you see it?" His voice came out rough. "Like I'm falling too." Her hand slid to his forearm, fingers curling just enough to hold. The touch felt like a vow carved in skin, and like the edge of a blade pressed to the soft hollow of his throat. Paranoia and longing twisted together until he couldn't tell them apart. Duty wasn't a separate thing anymore. It was the same fever that kept him coming back here, night after night, trading truths like loaded dice. "My parents," he said suddenly, the words spilling before he could stop them. "They came here with nothing. Worked 3 jobs each so I could go to college. Never complained. Never asked for anything. Just expected me to be perfect, quiet, useful." He laughed once bitter. "I'm none of those things anymore." Lena's thumb moved in a slow circle on his arm. "You're still useful. To someone." He looked at her, really looked. The lamp caught the gold flecks in her eyes, turned them to fire. "I should leave," he said. "You should." Neither of them moved. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words feeling hollow and small. "Don't be," she countered, turning toward him. "You aren't the one responsible." The road leveled into a straightaway. He eased off the accelerator, letting the car's momentum carry them through the gloom. The downpour slackened for a heartbeat before returning with a renewed violence, as though the sky itself were passing judgment on them. Lena reached across the console, her hand covering his on the gear shift. Their fingers interlaced without hesitation or doubt. He squeezed back so fiercely their knuckles turned a ghostly white. In the shadowed interior of the car, with the storm howling against the glass, that single point of contact felt more profound than any kiss. A raw, desperate tether between two people already submerged. He pulled into a scenic turnout, the tires grinding over wet gravel. As the engine ticked in the silence of the cooling metal, The waves thundered below like an audience refusing to be ignored. Neither made a move to leave the vehicle. "You're trembling," she noted softly. "As are you." She leaned in until their foreheads met. Cool skin pressed against a fevered brow. Their breaths, hot and jagged, mingled in the narrow gap between them. The air tasted of salt, the ocean, the rain, and the faint tang of her skin. Time ceased to have meaning. Minutes or hours, it was all the same. When she finally spoke, her voice was a mere breath against his lips. "I was there, up on the ridge." The confession shattered the silence like a stone through a window. I'd spiked his water with enough sedative to dull his reflexes. Not to kill him, just to hinder him, to make him clumsy. Then I waited. I watched him climb. When he finally lost his footing, I didn't reach out. I just stood there and let gravity finish what I had started. Min-joon's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic pulse that felt like it might break through his chest. The evidence he had been mentally cataloging for days, the inconsistencies in the timeline, the rope burn on her palm, her exact knowledge of the trail Robert chose, all locked together with a sickening click. She had designed it. She had executed it. She had survived it. And still he couldn't let go of her hand. "Why tell me now?" he asked, voice rough. "Because you already know." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "And because I can't keep pretending this doesn't end." He swallowed. "It doesn't have to. It does." Her thumb traced a slow circle over his knuckles. "I'm leaving. Not just Seattle. Everything. Before this pulls you under with me. Before you have to choose between the badge and this." "This," he echoed. The word tasted like ash and fire at once. She nodded. "We're burning too bright. Too fast. Tender enough to heal each other for a moment. Violent enough to destroy us both if we stay." He closed his eyes. The waves kept crashing. The rain kept falling. His insomnia waited just beyond her touch. Sharper now, crueler, a blade he knew would return the second she was gone. "I don't want to lose this," he said. "You already are." Her voice cracked on the last word. "Every mile we drive is counting down." He opened his eyes, looked at her, really looked. The gold in her irises caught the faint dashboard glow. Beautiful, terrifying, doomed. "Then let's drive a little farther," he said. She smiled, small, sad, razor-edged. "One more mile." He shifted into gear. The car rolled forward again, headlights slicing the dark. The coast stretched ahead, endless and unforgiving. Their hands stayed locked across the console, knuckles white, hearts hammering in time with the war drums below. One more mile, then another, counting down to execution. The storm had followed them to the overlook like a living thing, thunder rolling low and deliberate across the black Pacific, lightning forking white against the sky as though the heavens themselves were trying to tear the night apart. Min-joon pulled the car to the gravel edge, engine still ticking heat into the cold air. The rain hammered the roof in furious rhythm, drowning out everything except the crash of waves far below and the ragged sound of their breathing. He killed the headlights. Darkness swallowed them whole, broken only by the dashboard's faint green glow and the occasional flash that turned the interior into a stark negative. Min-joon reached into the back seat, without looking, pulled the thin file folder forward. He sat on the console between them like an offering or a guillotine. "Fentanyl traces in Robert's water bottle," he said, voice flat, mechanical. "Same compound profile as the one used on your mother. Not enough to kill outright, just enough to dull reflexes, make a man clumsy on a wet ridge." Lena stared straight ahead at the rain-slashed windshield. No flinch, no sharp intake of breath. "Footprints," he continued. "Partial but clear. Size 8 women's boot tread matching the pair you keep by your door. Leading to the ledge. Then back. No sign you try to him up. Still nothing. And the mercy echo," he said quieter now. "Your mother's chart. The exact dosage pattern. You learned how to calibrate it once. You used it again." Lightning cracked. For a split second her face was illuminated. Eyes dry, jaw set, mouth a thin line of resolve. She spoke then, voice steady as though reciting a grocery list while the world ended around them. "He was burying me alive long before that cliff." The words hung. Heavy. Final. Min-joon exhaled through his nose, a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I know. Lena turned to him slowly. Then why are we still sitting here? Because I can't do it. She reached out, fingers brushing the edge of the folder. You can. You should. He shook his head once. I can't put cuffs on you. And I can't watch you walk away knowing I let a killer go. I'm not asking you to let me go, she said. I'm asking you to let me finish this. The storm answered for him, wind howling around the car, rocking it on its suspension like it wanted to tip them over the edge. Lena shifted closer. Her head came to rest on his shoulder, tentative at first, then fully, as though testing whether the world would allow it. Min-joon's arms moved on instinct, locked around her, tight, desperate, the way a man might hold the last piece of driftwood in a shipwreck. Her hair smelled of rain and jasmine and something deeper, something that reminded him of home he'd never quite had. Tears came then, not loud, not dramatic. Silent tracks down her cheeks that mixed with the rain, streaking the glass beside them. His own eyes burned, but he refused to let them fall. Not yet. No words passed between them for what felt like hours. Only the brutal, aching knowledge settling into their bones. This love had become the crime scene. Every touch evidence. Every glance motive. Every breath complicity. Eventually she pulled back just enough to look at him. Her eyes, those gold-flecked dark eyes, burned with everything she refused to say aloud. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out her phone, thumbed it awake, hit record, held it between them like a confession booth. Min-joon, she began, voice soft but steel-edged, the southern cadence wrapping each syllable like barbed wire. If you're listening to this, it means I'm already gone. Don't look for me. Don't chase. You chose the badge tonight, not because you wanted to, but because you had to. That's who you are. The man who carries the weight so others don't have to. I won't be another weight. I won't be the thing that breaks you. A pause. Thunder rumbled. I loved you in the only way I knew how, completely. Selfishly. Until it hurt more to stay than to leave. Choose duty. Choose yourself. Let me be the mystery you never solve. It's the kindest thing you can do for both of us. She ended the recording. Set the phone on the dash. Looked at him one last time. Then she opened the door. Cold wind rushed in, carrying salt and ozone and the roar of the sea. Min-joon didn't stop her. She stepped out into the gale, coat whipping around her legs, hair lashing her face. She didn't look back. He watched her silhouette walk to the railing, lean against it, stare down into the black water below. Lightning flashed again, her profile sharp against the storm, regal even now. Then she turned and disappeared down the trail that led back to the road, vanished into the dark like smoke. Min-joon sat there until the cold seeped through his coat and into his marrow. The file folder stayed on the console, untouched. He couldn't bring himself to open it again. When he finally started the engine, the wipers fought a losing battle against the rain. He pulled onto the highway, headlights cutting weak paths through the night. The files felt heavier than his own bones in the passenger seat. The decision had been made, yet nothing was resolved. Only the storm knew the truth, and it kept screaming long after he drove away. The sky over the Washington coast bled into dusk like an old wound reopening. The horizon smeared crimson and violet, the last light bleeding out slow and reluctant. The beach stretched empty for miles, nothing but wet sand, driftwood bones, and the relentless churn of the Pacific. Lena's car sat parked above the dunes, doors locked, engine cold, as though she had simply stepped out for a walk and forgotten to come back. The driver's side window reflected the dying sky in fractured pieces. She had chosen this place deliberately. No witnesses, no cameras, just the sea and the sand and the silence that would swallow everything. Lena walked barefoot down the slope, coat discarded on the hood of the car, sleeves rolled to her elbows. The wind whipped her hair across her face, but she didn't push it away. She knelt at the tide line where the sand was dark and packed from the last high water. Her hands, strong, scarred, steady, dug into the wet grains. No chabit, no ceremony, just fingers clawing deep, flinging clumps aside in rhythmic scoops. The sand clung to her skin like wet accusations, cold and heavy, refusing to let go. She worked until the hole was deep enough, chest deep when she stood in it, shoulders just above the rim. Sweat mixed with sea spray on her brow. She paused once, breathing hard, looking out at the waves that rolled in gray and merciless. Then she stepped back in. She lay down slowly, deliberately, arms crossed over her chest like a woman already prepared for the coffin. The sand cradled her, cool and yielding. She closed her eyes. Miles away, Min-joon's phone buzzed once on the dashboard as he tore down the coastal highway. Tires screamed against wet asphalt. He had pieced together the clues she left, too deliberate to be accidental. The tide chart circled on her kitchen calendar, the beach access road she'd mentioned once in passing. The way she'd said, the sea always takes what it wants with that small, sad smile. He drove like a man already bleeding out. When he reached the dunes, the sky had gone fully dark. He killed the engine, grabbed the binoculars, old habit, useless now, and ran. Sand sucked at his boots. Wind tore at his coat. He scanned the beach with shaking hands. Nothing. No figure. No movement. Only tire tracks leading down from her car, already half erased by the incoming tide, and a shallow depression in the sand where the waves had smoothed everything flat. He dropped to his knees at the water's edge. The surf rushed in cold and unforgiving, soaking his pants to the thighs. He stared at the spot where she had been, where she still was, somewhere beneath the black water, and screamed her name into the roar. Lena! The ocean swallowed it. He screamed again, and again, until his throat burned raw, until the salt stung his cracked lips, until blood flecked his tongue, and the sound became nothing but ragged gasps. The binoculars fell from his hand into the foam. He stayed there on his knees as night closed in completely. The waves kept coming, relentless, erasing footprints, erasing hollows, erasing her. The mountains behind him stood silent sentinels. The sea held their secret now, locked in its depths forever. Insomnia returned like an old enemy slipping back in a bed beside him, sharper, darker, colder than before. No more fragile peace borrowed from her presence. Only the endless replay. Her voice on the voicemail he would listen to again and again in the months to come. The exact moment he started to pull away, the way she had chosen to become his unsolved mystery. He stood finally, legs numb, coat heavy with salt and sand. The beach was empty. Her car waited above the dunes like a headstone. He walked back to his own vehicle without looking behind him. The decision to leave was carved into him now, permanent, unhealing. A love that had solved nothing, destroyed everything, and still burned hotter than the sun. He would never feel the same way again. The waves erased her, but they could never touch the scar she left behind. It would ache every sleepless night for the rest of his life. Subscribe if you stayed to the end. Thanks and God bless.